Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
Welcome to the show. Jeff Sharon here along with Eric Lopez. We also got Andrew Glukov with us and Bryson Turner hanging out with us today on a what has turned out to be a busy and getting busier by the minute week as we go through. Eric, we got softball to talk about. Some results that are in.
That is correct. Season underway for softball. A good start to the weekend. Great atmosphere. Plus, we got the other sport in the diamond starting this weekend, Mr. Sharon.
Yep, we got baseball. We hear from Greg Lovelady a little bit later in the show, our preseason interview with him. And then also some record smashing going on in UCF women's golf. The Orlando Guardians are also getting started. We got some UCF NFL players getting ready to start in the XFL this coming week. But we start with our first two topics. Obviously, OU and Texas are going to be leaving a year early. We're going to touch on that in a little bit, but we wanted to start with basketball. And gentlemen, it looks like the ship is righting itself after that dismal 7 or 5 game losing streak. 2 straight wins. Obviously, we talked about we had UCF had the win at Wichita State, first win in school history at Wichita, by the way. 5-point game, 5-point win at Koch Arena. Eat that, Koch brothers. And then in addition to that, they come back, and for the space game, block party Saturday, and in the evening, UCF shoots the lights out against the Tulsa Golden Hurricane, hitting a school record 17 3-point shots en route to a 44-point win over Tulsa. And now here's the situation for UCF men's basketball. 15-9, back to 500 in conference at 6-6. In the standings, they are currently 6th. They are a game and a half, though, out of the top 4, which means that you finish in the top 4, you get that first round bye. Now, here's where the part starts getting critical. Now, we talked about injuries. We didn't see Jalen Young the other day against Tulsa. He had a cast on his hand. We don't know how long he's going to be out for. I did see Michael Durr no longer had the wrap on his hand. So now, we're all on high alert to see if Michael Durr returns, but that means that these next 2 games, well, really the rest of these games and the rest of the remaining 6 games in the regular season are tremendous. Starting with at Memphis on Thursday at 8 p.m. in FedEx Forum. That game's on ESPN Plus, and then back home for Cincinnati on Sunday. So, Elo, I want to start with you. My sense heading into this is the biggest game right now ahead of them, because we're looking at the opportunities that UCF has to sort of boost themselves in the net. This, as of right now, is their last Quadrant 1 game. They have 2 more Quadrant 2 games, home for Cincy at Temple. USF, Tulsa, East Carolina are all Quad 4 games. You can't drop any of those. But Memphis, your last Quad 1 opportunity. They're at 41 in the net. UCF currently at 56. By the way, they jumped some 15 spots in the last week. And are trying to once again knock on the door of that of that mark around 47, 48 in the net to try and get back into the hunt for a possible at-large bid. What's the plan right now? And what did we see from the last two games that has looks to have sort of steadied things prior to this big matchup at Memphis?
Well, I think defensively, first of all, they have played better defense, given up less than 70 points. We've talked about that. They've given up over 70 points during that losing streak. That's been part of it. The other part of it is they've shot the ball really well from the perimeter and the three-point line. They set the school. I mean, they got 12 threes at Wichita State, and then at school records 17 against Tulsa, where they went 17 for 36. I think Taylor Hendricks has really started to be more aggressive on the offensive end too. I think that's helped as a go-to. So I think it's a combination of those things, and guys just kind of getting a little bit better, and it sets them up here for a very important week. You're at Memphis and you host Cincinnati. These are two marquee games. You win both of these games, you might get yourself maybe back in the bubble. If you split the two games, I think you put yourself in a really good spot to be in the NIT deal. So this is an important week. This is an important week. If they, from that standpoint of postseason basketball, you're right. I think that's a credit to them and what they've done. It's funny, when you have a losing streak, you kind of lose perspective of how the season is going. This team is 15-9. I just want to let that people know. I think, right, 15-9. Right? Can you verify that, Jeff? Can you guys verify that we're actually 15-9 and we're not like 2-15 like some people think on social media?
Reports are at this moment in time that we're actually 15 wins and 9 losses. Would you have that?
And Jeff sounds like an alien.
Yeah, he just disappeared. Well, it was Star Wars night, Drew, on basketball on Saturday. So maybe that's Jeff's way. That's Jeff's way of impersonating Saturday night, was the Star Wars. Maybe he's trying to be R2-D2 or some sort of Star Wars character.
Have you ever seen Star Wars?
I have.
There was a lightsaber fight at halftime. Like, name a different school that would do that.
There was a lightsaber fight in Jeff's microphone.
Let me tell you something. It's back now, right? Yeah. So, by the way, that was wild. That was an absolutely wild night for that space game. And 17 threes. Bryson, you were there. We can't expect that again the rest of the night, right? I mean, a school record, actually beat the school record from my junior year, actually. Senior night against Campbell, 2004, when UCF beat Campbell by 50. By the way, UCF assistant Robbie Lang was the head coach of Campbell at the time. I remember that game. I actually have video of it posted on the internet somewhere. But that was the record. And now we have a new record, and seemingly everybody was knocking in threes. Tierno Sila actually banked one in. PJ Edwards was hitting threes. Ithiel Horton hit 6 of them. But we can't expect that to be the norm now, can we?
Well, you mentioned that Campbell 2004 game. They tied that mark back during the double overtime thriller in the Memphis game. Now, obviously, that was in double overtime, so you have to adjust your expectations a little bit for that. But they still made 16 threes during the course of that game to tie that record. I think the big two things on these previous two games is that Johnny Dawkins mentioned this team was getting much more comfortable in their roles without Michael Durr. And I think now that they've had a couple of games to really adjust to not having Michael Durr on the court, they were able to figure out other ways to use their strengths without having a 7-foot big man like him in the middle, like Durr, in the middle of the court. In the Wichita State game, that was they had their most steals of the season in that one game. So there's some turnovers for you there. And then, of course, against Tulsa, they were just kept shooting the ball from beyond the arc. I think this team is really sneaky talented at what they're able to do from beyond the arc. I mean, I was sitting there with Reese Holiday, who's the sports copy editor for NSM Today, UCF's journalism student. And we were just flabbergasted, because they were already at double-digit threes in the first half. And we were like, oh my gosh, are they going to break the record before halftime? And then I remember you tweeting about this, Jeff. They ran out of T-shirts to throw out. Yeah.
We were having a lot of fun down on the over by the. I was having a lot of fun watching the marketing folks kind of scrambling out, because we were like, I had to announce that we ran out of T-shirts, and the students started booing because they throw T-shirts out after every three. And then the other part that was hilarious was they were they hit. Not only did we run out of threes, I forget what the other part of it was. There were. When you really think about it, 51. Oh yeah, here's the other part that I thought was good. And the 3-pointers are one thing, but I thought that Drew, you were right about the defense. These last 2 games, UCF is back to holding opponents under 60 points a game, which prior to that 5-game losing streak, that's what they were holding opponents to 60 or less.
It's 70 is the magic number.
Yeah, on average, they're holding opponents to 60. But you're right, 70 is the magic number. And that's down from 83 a game that they were giving up during that 5-game losing streak. So, my question to you now is, can this continue against a Memphis team that, right now is tied for second in the conference at 9-3 with Tulane? They're 19-6. They haven't lost. They've had only one since the 107-104 double overtime loss at UCF back on the 11th. They've only lost once to Tulane, and that was a 1-point game in overtime. And they're coming off a win, 86-77 win at home against Temple. UCF struggles against Memphis in Memphis are well documented, but is this game gettable?
Well, I mean, any game's gettable at this point. But as you said, UCF on the road is not very good. And they've lost the teams below them. They've lost, Tulane, they lost to USF, they lost to Cincinnati, and that was during that 5-game losing streak.
3-4 away from home. 3-4 away from home this year.
They squeezed that double OT win against Memphis, but that was at home. Now they got to go on the road. That's probably the toughest place to play in the conference.
That's the most historically worst place UCF's ever played. It's won once.
Yeah.
So I mean, if they get lucky, those threes, are falling, but you live by the 3, you die by the 3. You're not going to get what happened against Tulsa to repeat itself to that magnitude. You're not. You're going to have to find other ways to win. You're going to have a lockdown defense. UCF has 1 win in regulation all year against a team that scored 70 or more. Then you have the double OT thriller that they won against Memphis. So the key is keep it under 70, and you got yourself a shot. If Memphis can score, UCF's not going to keep up.
Yeah. So this is such a critical 2-game stretch, and then if they can get, here's the thing. Okay, like you mentioned, Eric, 15-9, right?
Wow, really? I sort of sweat. That'd be darn.
The Nets
we're losing season here.
20 wins heading into the conference tournament is not out of reach, I think.
Ooh, well, let's break it down here.
It's a stretch.
So you're at Memphis. You host Cincinnati. I think
you got to go 5-1.
Can you win 5 of your last 6?
Yeah, you got to go 5-1.
Well, I think splitting Memphis, Cincinnati. You got to win South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I really get nervous when I say this, but you got to win at Tulsa.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It's a little tricky. All right.
I know. We've seen theater stuff. The fly in the ointment is that game at Temple too.
Temple's been a tough place, and then
that's not
East
an
Carolina.
easy place to play.
You got to win East Carolina. I think to me to be a postseason team, you've got to win East Carolina. You got to win Tulsa. You got to win South Florida. That's 3 games. Then and then if you can go, honestly, if you go 2-1 between Memphis, Cincinnati, and Temple, that would put you 5-2 stretch there. That gets you to 20-11. Yeah, no, 20 wins is possible. Maybe win a game or 2 in the conference tournament. That might be good enough to maybe get you the NIT. If you sweep this Memphis, Cincinnati, and you beat, if you go 6-1, if you go like 6-1 or something like that, now you're in the conversation on the bubble going to the conference tournament. So I think that's
as it currently stands. Eric, you talk about NIT. According to the ResourceNexus.com's NIT bracketology.
That's right.
February 12th was the last time they ran it. UCF is currently slated as the last 3 seed of the NIT. If it stands currently, at 65 or 56, the List Dexia kicking in. at 56 in the net. You look at the teams around UCF in the net. Charleston at 55, they're 24-3, but this is where the schedule matters and why UCF playing a non-conference schedule with a few good programs really helps. Even though UCF's 1-5 in quadrant 1 games, the fact that they played that many actually helps. Charleston, one spot above them, has one Q1 game, and they're 24-3, one spot up. And then Ohio State above them has a losing record. They're 11-14, and they're 54th because they're 2-9 in Q1 games.
Come on, that's ridiculous. Get up. They should not be in postseason.
No, and you know what? Even if they crawled up higher, I cannot see the selection committee taking a team that close to 500 or below into the postseason. There's no way. I mean, the
3 games under 500.
Yes, the pitchforks would be sharpened, the torches would be lit, and they would storm the selection committee if a team with a losing record like Ohio State somehow manages to get in as an at-large because of their strength of schedule.
Wow.
Drew out here setting up the drama.
But yeah, no, look, I mean, you're right. To your point, there's other NIT sites. D Ratings has them going to Seton Hall as a 4-5, which Jeff has already proclaimed he's going to fly out there to cover the game, sacrifice for us at the Banneret, which we appreciate. See his other – what's your ties with Seton Hall?
So Shaheen Holloway was the head coach. First of all, I have a couple cousins who went to Seton Hall. And Shaheen Holloway, who played at Seton Hall, was the head coach at St. Peter's last year. Both my parents went to St. Peter's. So,
can he get you tickets?
Probably not.
Oh, okay. And then there's another NIT site that has us hosting Southern Miss. So, look, they're in the mix for postseason basketball, but they got to finish strong. Look, this is a big game for Memphis, too. Let's not lose fact. Memphis is kind of one of the last 4 teams in, depending which bracketologist you like to look at. So, they need this game just as much. So, that's going to be a big game. This is a big game. It's the last trip for UCF to Memphis. We're going to go to a lot of tough places.
Last train to Memphis.
Yeah, and then Cincinnati's played well this year. Wes Miller's done a nice job there. They're trying to get in the mix for postseason basketball. Noon tip at home. We need a good crowd there. So it's a good stretch here. And then, obviously, as you mentioned, Jeff, when do they get Michael Durr? That remains to be seen. If they can get him back, that could help. Otherwise, I'll be interested in the Memphis game. If Johnny baited Penny Hardaway into going small, does he try to do that again, or does Penny say, no, we're going to go bigger and try to – that will be interesting what the adjustments are made for both coaches in this matchup.
Yeah. As it currently stands in the NIT bracketology, you have 3 American teams in the NIT as it currently stands. UCF at a 3, Cincinnati as a 5, and Tulane as a 7.
Boy, no faith in Tulane. They're second in the conference, too. So, all right.
Well, don't let the conference record get in the way here, because UCF has they're third in the net, but they're outside the top. They're 6th in the conference standings. So don't let that skew you.
Tulane, by the way, we mentioned they're tied for second with Memphis, but they're 86th in the net. So, I mean, that gives you kind of an idea of the discrepancy between what we see in the conference standings and what we see in the net. But anyway, so we will be monitoring, obviously, that game against Memphis. So huge. ESPN Plus, 8 p.m. Thursday night, followed by the home game Sunday at noon against Cincinnati. That game will be on ESPNU. So big one there, too. Big week for UCF men's basketball. Real quick on the women. They're at 11-11, 2-8 in the conference, but they stopped the bleeding against Cincinnati on Wednesday on the road in a 60-57 victory. But then back to Memphis, and they came up short against the Tigers by just 2 points, 50-48. Actually played a very, very good game defensively. Game went to overtime, and they just couldn't pull it out there. And this is a team that they held Memphis in the first quarter. I've never seen this, to 3 for 23 from the field in the first quarter alone. And UCF jumped out to a lead. Memphis came back, jumped out to a lead again. A small. It was a tight second half the whole way. But here they are now at 11-11, 2-8. Maya Burns, by the way, led UCF in scores. She had a double-double, 12 and 13. And Memphis did a pretty good job against Destiny Thomas. Fouled her out of the game, actually, 7 points and 11 rebounds, 9 of them defensively. But as we look real quick, Eric, at UCF women's basketball, I think the goal right here is, can you get above 500 by the end of the year? And they have South Florida coming up for the Space game on Wednesday. That's going to be rough.
South Florida team that's coming off their first conference loss at home to Houston, so they are going to be locked and loaded.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is face the South Florida team coming off a loss right now.
Yeah, so that won't be pretty. That's going to be rough. And the Memphis game, they got a tough call against them. There was a charge called against them in regulation. It was a clear flop. Unfortunately, they didn't get the call. That's something they'll probably get used to when they get to the Big 12. So, but we'll see. USF, that's going to be a tall order there. They'll have at least the Citronaut jerseys out there. So, for all you Citronaut fans, you got that going for you.
Love it. We're all in on the Conagra Blue. And then East Carolina on Saturday as well. So, so we'll have to see. Can they? I think if you're Satia Mesh, it's like, hey, let's just get splits at the very least. At the very least, let's just get splits the rest of the way. You can finish the regular season at 500, and then you have a little something to work with. If you do, you get a couple wins against some teams that maybe you shouldn't. But ECU, that's going to be a tough one too, because they're at 8-4 in the conference in third place, 17-8 overall. But hey, look, just keep swimming, as they say in what is it, Finding Nemo, right, Drew? You're a dad. Keep swimming.
Just keep swimming.
Just keep swimming. All right. Bit we want to talk about here before we take a break and go to our baseball preview. So, Eric, you were right.
Whoa. Is anyone actually recording this? Please.
Oh, yeah. We're recording. Eric was right.
Document this, Drew.
Eric was right. Listen, you got to hand out the credit where credit is due. Eric was right about Texas and Oklahoma, who it is official now. They will leave the Big 12 after the 2023-2024 year and head to the SEC 1 year early. They came to an apparent agreement with the rest of the Big 12. And really the holdout here, like we were talking about earlier, was Fox. There was a idea that, there was basically, the rest of the schools had said, okay, this, we're cool with this. But Fox wanted to be made whole. So Drew has a couple details on it, but I got to give credit to Eric. He was right. He said that they'll figure out a way to do it, and it's going to cost Oklahoma and Texas some $100 million in total to leave a year early. Yeah, it's a lot of scratch, man.
Unfortunately, UCF will not get a dime of that one, Drew.
Here's what's going to end up happening. So, as history shows, when there's a buyout involved, it gets negotiated down to around 2/3 or so. This one was just a little bit below that as far as the negotiated amount. That money's going to be used in two ways. Part of it's going to go to Fox. They're going to make up the financial losses they're going to get from losing Texas and Oklahoma a year early.
There were also some schedule adjustments that were made too, right?
Yeah, and the main one was there's a series between Texas and Michigan. First game was supposed to be at Texas in 2024 and then at Michigan in 27. They've flipped it. So now it's going to be a Fox game in 2024 at Michigan. And that was part of the negotiations, was to flip the schedule so that Fox could get the game that year and make up for some of the losses that they'll take from not having Texas next season. And you know what? That actually, okay. I like the outside the box thinking. It was an opportunity that they didn't have to really change anything. They just had to make sure that both schools could handle the flipping of when the dollars are coming in from that home game. Mm-hmm. So glad that part worked out, because Eric and I, we've been talking about this for a while, and we all knew that Fox was going to be the
last roadblock.
Everyone else wanted this done for a long time. It was always Fox, and understandably so. I don't blame Fox at all. They're not the bad guys here. They have a business to protect.
Sure.
And they're losing Texas and Oklahoma, which even if they're not a great team, they get eyeballs.
Big brands.
Eyeballs equals dollars, and you can't replicate that. So they found a way to move on. So probably like maybe 20 mil or so is probably going to end up going to Fox to their coffers as part of a makeup. And then the rest of it goes to the conference. And that money is going to be used to offset the monies that the new four are getting when they come in. Because what people don't realize is the new four, UCF, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, the money they're getting coming in and why it's structured is it was being paid out of the shares the remaining 8 were getting. It wasn't like the TV people were prorated. No, they actually cut out of their media dollars to make up for that. So the remaining money is going to go to the remaining 8, make up for those losses, and everyone's going to be whole. Everyone's going to be happy. The new 4 join, they get what's already been promised to them, and the remaining 8 no longer have to take a bath to make it happen.
I got to give credit to Brett Yormark here, by the way.
Yeah.
He squeezed Texas and Oklahoma for everything that they were worth. He made his TV partners happy. And now reports are he is switching his attention to the possibility of expanding the Big 12 even further. Now, that's always been kind of on the back burner, but we're seeing some reports out of the Pac-12 that their television deal, as Eric Lopez also correctly predicted, is looking like an absolute dumpster fire. So badly, in fact, that the Pac-12 had to release a statement on social media just yesterday on Wednesday saying, basically, if you can see a textual representation of the meme of the apartment on fire and the little dog saying, "This is fine,"
right?
That's pretty much exactly what the Pac-12 was saying. What is going on here on the latest with this, Eric Lopez, and when we start hearing about some actual rumblings? We've heard about Gonzaga as a non-football member before. There have been rumblings about Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, the 4 corner schools, as we call them, possibly, bailing out of the Pac-12 and making their way over to the Big 12. Where are we, and what do you think is the most likely scenario?
Well, I think we're all waiting on the Pac-12 deal, which I know this is a shock, but there's not a lot of interest for carrying Oregon State, Washington State football. I mean, I'm stunned by that. So where do they end up and how much money? And it's not probably going to match up close to the Big 12. Now, apparently they've been talking to SMU, which has really ticked off the Arizona schools from what I've heard, because they don't want SMU in there. They're like, why are we bothering with SMU? I think the Gonzaga thing is also a key wild card in this. Gonzaga has been talking to the Big 12. Gonzaga has also talked to the Big East. They've talked to the Mountain West. Where does Gonzaga end up? It seems like Gonzaga wants to get out of the West Coast Conference, go to a stronger basketball league. So
there's a problem here, though. There's a problem here. Negotiations haven't been for all sports.
Correct.
They've been for basketball. And
correct.
That's
Only.
it. And
correct.
That's a sticking point. And rightfully so.
Right. But let's say Gonzaga makes the move for hoops, Big 12 or whatever. Well, a school like Arizona is going to keep an eye on that because Arizona is a basketball school. So I think that situation will play itself out maybe towards the summer, maybe in that June range. I think it's something to monitor. I think where everybody's waiting to see what does the Pac-12 come up with as far as the television deal. And then there's going to be a rippling effect from that. I think the Gonzaga thing will be interesting. I would maybe think we'll hear something about Gonzaga maybe after the college basketball season in May or June. So I think those are the 2 next pieces to look at. Drew has done a good job breaking down the financial impact of this Big 12 deal agreement. This is a great move for everybody. I think it's a great move. Remember, 2024 is the first season where the playoff expands. I think everybody wants to be where they want it to be. That's the year USC and UCLA will also be in the Big 10. So I think it's a good move for everybody. I think it's a good sign, too, that Fox and ESPN are working well together because I think they're going to end up working together for the playoffs. So I think this is all good for college athletics and college football in particular. I'll just keep it at college football because there's other sports that don't really like all this realignment. For UCF, I think from an on-the-field standpoint, I think this is really good news because you have 2 less opponents to go over and compete against in your own conference. I'm not going to break them down sport by sport, but there are some sports, for example, where Oklahoma dominates, like in softball, Texas in volleyball. That's going to help softball and volleyball now a year shorter. Other sports. The only negative, if you want to say of a negative, His football now is probably going to lose out hosting Texas, which has been widely speculated was going to be on the UCF home date in Orlando. My suggestion, and that would with Arch Manning and stuff, that's a big deal, but I don't think it's as huge of a deal as some of the in the big picture overall, in my opinion. I don't know if you agree with that or not, Drew.
I won't lose an ounce of sleep over that. Let's be honest. There was a lot of moving parts here, And Brett Yormark flat out said, look, I've got 3 phases here.
Yeah.
Take care of the media deal. Take care of Oklahoma, Texas.
Done.
Expand. It was, steal underwear, ? Make profit. The old underwear gnomes from South Park. So everything is really, Brett Yormark has done a fantastic job. Everything has been falling into place in a good way. Not as you said, this helps the television partners work well. They're going to be partners with the Big 12. Yormark has really locked in good relations with these 2 conferences after Bob Bowlesby napalmed his relationship with ESPN. Maybe he was playing chess and he knew he had to go out and blaze a glory. And so that the rest of the
Are you saying this was a good cop, bad cop situation?
I don't know. I'm just
Bob Bowlesby and Brett Yormark.
I'm just throwing something on the wall. but the truth is, Brett Yormark has really proven to be adept at what he needs to do to run a conference. You're seeing a lot of solidarity within the remaining schools. The negotiations. Everyone seems to be working very amicably towards a good solution, and this could come, pay dividends down the road when it comes to other negotiations with stuff between conferences.
Right.
Perhaps the Big 12 wants a basketball challenge. Well, he's obviously proven to be a good guy to work with. I'm going to want to work with Brett Yormark. You have the Big 10. It's about to have a new commissioner named. You want to, have a good reputation going in to develop a relationship. But to what Eric said, the Pac-12's television deal is exploding in a bad way. We're hearing numbers in the 20s.
Right.
Washington cannot operate with that low of amount. It's already well documented. They're going to have to start cutting things. This may be the opportunity that if Fox is willing to play ball, because I know there's a pro rata agreement for Power 5 schools on the ESPN side. It's already built in. It's not built in on Fox. So if Fox is willing to play ball, they may be able to poach some schools from the Pac-12 if this keeps drawn out. They want to wait and see a final figure before any move is made. But as you know, schools are always talking to each other. They're always talking to conferences. There's even talks that a school like Tulane is reaching out. Hey, what do you think? But that's smart. You always talk to conferences just to see what's going on with them.
Hey, make them say no, right?
Make them say no, because they're not going to call you. They can't call you. You've got to call them. If they call you, that's a lawsuit. And that's why when Oklahoma and Texas went to the SEC, they had to make it very clear. They called the conference. But that's because these schools are always talking to other guys.
They call the SEC, and the SEC's like, oh, we had no idea.
Well, there's all sorts of back channel stuff. UCF talks to the SEC. It's normal. You're always talking to each other.
Well, speaking of the SEC, one other thing to watch now with the SEC making this move and starting, in 2024 is, do they go to 9 conference games? And if they do, there's going to be a rippling effect because we're going to have a lot of SEC schools dropping non-conference games, especially Florida, which could impact UCF in 2024 because Florida in the 2024 non-conference schedule has FSU on the road. They have Miami, Sanford, and UCF. One of those is going to get dropped. It will not be FSU, and it's not going to be Sanford. So it's probably going to be either Miami or UCF. And I think
that's kick the can down the road, though. Instead of canceling it, do you think they reschedule? Because
they could reschedule. They could reschedule
in the future schedule. So this 24 one's kind of way in front of those other two. Maybe it goes back to a 27 or a 28, but not buy it outright. Can they work it out? Because UCF still needs games. They probably don't want the buyout, and Florida has that future scheduled room where you can kick the can and no one gets hurt.
Last word, Eric. June 30th is the day that we're looking at, right?
I think for
remember last
yeah.
year, that was when the UCLA USC news dropped, and it kind of surprised everybody. So you're thinking right around that June 29th, June 30th. Keep your notifications locked in, right?
And don't get suckered in by the college football media that tells you that their negotiations are over. They're all getting used. They're getting played. Just listen to us. Me and Drew will keep you updated. We're the only one. Us two and Ross Dellinger are the only three people that don't get fall for this bait.
That's okay. So Eric Lopez Elo, Stat Boy Drew, Ross Dellinger as well on Twitter. Those are the people who you set the notification bells to on what's going on. Oh, by the way, Drew, real quick, $20 million surplus according to the Orlando Sentinel, Jason Beatty, for UCF athletics. I don't know about you, but that tells me that UCF did a very good job of coming out of the pandemic in solid financial shape. And that was one of our big concerns a couple years ago. How would this happen? Well, you got a $20 million surplus.
I mean, it helps that, everyone, that's when the Big 12 invite came in and all those donations started coming in. That helps. Plus, they haven't upped their expenditures really yet. So it was a combination of smart cost cutting during the pandemic and the positive fallout of the conference alignment change news. But you know what? People are online like, oh, what do we do with the money? Oh, you know what you do with the money? You keep it internal. You pay your staff, your SIDs, your support staff. You work on the guys that you never hear from because UCF needs to keep those all-stars. Your media team, those guys. Those are the unsung heroes of the department. They need to get a boost before, let's spend it on coaches or facilities. You take care of your people first.
100%. And I think that, Eric, what do you see on that one? Because, it's, I'm sure every coach has their shopping list, right? When the money starts pouring in. But I think, one of the things that we've always talked about that I think UCF has been really smart about over the years is establishing the infrastructure. They didn't do what USF did and waited for the perfect opportunity to build a stadium. They went ahead and built the stadium and tried to and have gone about the process of improving it. And obviously, that's one of the things that they're going to have to work on down the road. But, that's at least you have some cash in the coffers as you begin to make this big move.
Well, it's a positive, and as you head to the Big 12, that hopefully will grow even more. And look, I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, you got NIL that you're dealing with. I mean, they've started kind of, you dabble in that. You dabble in, facilities, stuff to be made, renovations in stadiums for different sports. We'll get into about that later with softball in particular and baseball for that matter. So there's a lot of stuff
that you certainly need to upgrade. Like, I mean, I'm not sure, but I'm sure every conference has certain benchmarks that you have to have for certain sports. Well, I'm not familiar with exactly what those might be between the American and the Big 12, but those do exist.
Here's the difference. Big 12 actually has fans in all sports, unlike the American, where they don't, some schools don't. Well, USF has no fans in a lot of sports. I think Drew can, right, Drew? I'm just saying. I mean, I don't, they have a few softball fans and women's.
They have a lot of football fans. They always seem to wear red at their home games.
Yeah, in the stands there. Well, that's not the case in the Big 12.
They're just casually throwing grenades in the room and leaving.
I'm just saying. But I do think the Big 12, they support a lot of the sports. So I think expanding of seats in certain sports is going to be a key factor, and among other things, video, stuff like that. But it's a great sign, and it's good credit to Terry and everybody that, and fans. I mean, in other sports, they're starting to come out. Volleyball had a great year attendance. I know that's not accounting this number, but last year, volleyball, baseball, and softball drew well. Football's draws well. So all that stuff kind of helps.
Now, I'm a pump the brakes kind of guy when it comes to expansion of facilities from an attendance standpoint. You want to build demand before you want to expand.
Yeah.
Well, if you tune in later,
rhyme there. Build demand before you expand. Nice, Drew.
Get that on put that in a frame and put that
on a T-shirt.
This room right now.
Put that on a T-shirt right now.
Never expand because there's no demand.
Build demand before you expand. All right. Well, it's going to be a fun next couple months, leading up to that June 30th. Sort of keep your eye out for what happens there. So, It's funny how everything is just sort of coming together in a way that, it's like really starting to feel real now. And these next 4 months, man.
What you need to do is go to the Big 12 website on July 1st, and everything will become very real.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? All right, when we come back, let's talk a little UCF baseball. Greg Lovelady and his team are getting ready to start their 2023 season. We will hear from him, and then later on in the show, we got some records to talk about that are getting smashed left and right. Stick around. The Black Gold Banneret Podcast is back after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon here, along with Eric Lopez. It is baseball season this week. Last week we did softball, previewed that. They went off to a 3-1 start. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But this week, UCF baseball gets underway. Eric Lopez and you guys, you, Eric, and Bryson had the chance to talk to Greg Lovelady. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there for our annual meetup with Greg, but it was good to see him nonetheless. And UCF picked third in the conference this year, even though that poll was 2 months ago. But they're ready to go here now.
They are. It's and I know Greg's very confident. A lot of new faces, pretty much a 50-50 split of new faces versus returners for a team that dealt with so many injuries last year and yet found a way to win 35 games and finish near the top of the American Conference. Me and Bryson had a chance recently to talk to Coach Lovelady about this upcoming season, the new faces, including some guy named Plumlee. Plumlee, you've heard of him, Jeff, right? Plumlee, John Rice?
Rings a bell.
Yeah, what's his role going to be with baseball? We talked about that as well as the schedule and much more. Here now, Greg Lovelady on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. And joining us now, the head coach of the UCF baseball program, getting set for opening night against Siena. Great tradition. He's always been kind to us and every year to talk some baseball, among other things. I speak of Greg Lovelady, who joins us. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How you guys doing? Appreciate y'all having me.
Doing good. Let's talk about it. How has this fall and gone as you get set down for the season? You got just about give and take a half the team back from a team that won 35 games, considering a ton of adversity with the injuries, including on the pitching staff. How is this year's team kind of outlook looking?
I mean, I think really, really good. I'm excited about this group. We just have a great mix of age and experience, mixed with talent and some big transfers, and also mixed with some younger guys that, either were on the team last year and just expected to have bigger roles or freshmen. So, I think it's a great mix. I think we're a lot deeper, obviously, just with the one, just because I think we set it up better, just to avoid hoping to have, a kind of a repeat of last year's injuries, but also, we're just healthy right now. This time last year, we had really already started the kind of injury bug and had already lost like 4 or 5 guys for the season, just either late in the fall or in January. At this point, we're fairly healthy. We're in a good spot, but we have the depth to do that. And again, you kind of mentioned it, but I'm really proud of last year's team for winning 35 games and coming in second place in conference and really doing that with, 5 or 6 of your best players missing at least half the year or the whole year. And so, I think that it showed our guys, how to handle adversity, which I think is going to help this year. At the same time, though, I think the depth and the experience that a lot of guys got last year, puts us in a good spot. And now we just got to go out and show everybody what we're made of.
Well, let's talk a little bit of some of their positions. Let's start with the outfield. It's going to be strange not to have Jeffrey Pena there overseeing things at center field, but you do bring back Lex Butterker. Just talk about your outfield outlook there as well. With some new faces there in the mix.
Yeah, obviously having Lex back, playing almost every day as a freshman last year and having the success he has had, like that just gives us somebody that again has that experience, and obviously a year older and understanding, kind of what the grind is like and what to expect will be a huge help for us. We brought in Corey Robinson, who was a transfer from the University of Florida, a local kid in DeLand. They had some good playing time there last year, but we're just looking for a different experience. And, he kind of had our best fall offensively. And so had a lot of success in the fall. Very similar to Jeffrey in terms of skill set, one of, if not the fastest kid on our team. Has the ability to play center field, can play right, but has some power, ability to change the game with his legs and bunt. So that's going to be obviously an opportunity. Matt Cedarberg transferred in from Southern Miss. He was a local junior college kid at College of Central Florida, from Florida. That has had a good fall for us, a good early season that, has an opportunity to play. Brady Shannon, is really a special freshman that has the ability to really be a really special player here. Just the power, the size, a sports star in high school, and hit some monster home runs in the fall. So I think he has the ability to really kind of be a future middle of the order guy for us. And then you obviously have John Rice Plumley. So very similar to his football pedigree, like just is able to, a super athlete, can change the game with his legs, can, even in a short amount of time being able to practice with us, just dropping some bump base hits and running balls down in the outfield. So obviously he is so athletic that it's amazing how quickly the swing and just the baseball legs underneath him are coming back so fast. Not playing obviously all fall and really not playing much last spring just because of he was ineligible due to the transfer rule. So, his leadership and the things that he brings is special. So obviously he's another guy that I expect to get a ton of playing time, if not starting for us on opening day. So, those guys really have done a great job, and just kind of excited to see, how they all kind of play when the lights come on.
Do you have a comparison of JRP as a baseball player, a guy, which is such a unique situation because you don't have him in the fall. You have him. He's great speed, which fits your team identity because you love to be aggressive on the base pads. So I would imagine he's a big part of that too, and that nice fit. Do you have a comp of somebody you've coached similar to him?
He is similar to Jeffrey, just more physical than Jeffrey. So I think he has a little bit more natural power than Jeffrey does, but from a defensive and speed and the things that he's trying to do, like I think they're very similar. So, you had Trent Taylor and Jeffrey Pena in the outfield last year that just really shrunk the amount of acreage in the outfield that was, that balls were able to fall. And I think if you have Corey and JRP in the lineup, like that's very similar in terms of those two guys being able to, they're going to be two, not only the fastest guys on our team, but they might be two of the fastest guys in our conference and maybe two of the fastest guys in the country in terms of college baseball. So it definitely, whether they're starting or whether they're playing there late in the game, it definitely shrinks the field and makes us a much better defensive outfield.
Coach, you're bringing back an infield this year where just brimming, at least as far as returners go, and then of course the freshmen that I've seen at the fall seem to have really gotten off to a strong footing. What can you say about this year's infield, and how do you think you're going to able to sift through to see who ends up starting where?
Yeah, it's a really talented group, and it's good to have some age and experience on there. And it's an interesting age and experience though, because it's guys that, a couple guys that have really, really been banged up in their career here. Andrew Brait is always been one of the best defenders on our team and just had some really bad luck. Gets hit in the face and breaks his orbital bone 2 years ago. He started half the games as a true freshman at short, breaks his orbital bone in year two, and then last fall, just swinging, pops his shoulder out and needs to have labrum surgery and fix his left shoulder, non-throwing shoulder, and misses most of the year last year. So to have him back, I mean, just a plus defender, can play any position on the infield, but somebody that really understands the pace of the game, and understands like what the infield position needs. And offensively, he's always done well when he has got an opportunity to play, whether it was as a freshman, whether it was in the fall. We had really high hopes for him 2 years ago before he got hit in the face. And then obviously last year, just the same thing, kind of high hopes in the fall, and he was having a great fall, and then obviously gets hurt. So he's just a guy that can really, really give us the leadership and just of how to prepare, how to go about your business. Nick Romano at first base, having him back is obviously huge. I mean, he's been one of our best hitters for the last 3 years, and obviously tearing his ACL after the huge start that he had for us the first 2 weeks was really, really a blow to our offense. But to have him back and healthy and be able to get his bat going is going to be a middle of the order guy. Tom Jostin, ability to play second base. Tom gives us a lot of versatility. He can play infield or outfield, but a guy that's been starter for us. Really 2020 he came in and started and got off to a good start, and then obviously gets 2 more huge years and a ton of at bats, and just the experience, the power, the ability to play second base or the outfield. And then you got Drew Farrow and Greg Pate, who are 2 really, really talented freshmen. Drew has the ability, he's very similar because he's a switch hitter and he has the ability of Alex Freeland. From a tool standpoint, he's farther along than Alex Freeland was at this age, their freshman years. Drew, again, a big time football player in high school. So, we'll be interested to see how he handles the game situations and whatnot, where Alex was an absolute gamer. Drew's a little bit farther ahead on the tool side. So we'll kind of, time will tell in terms of how he handles the game. Matt Cedarberg, also, who I mentioned in the outfield, he has the ability to play the infield as well. So again, gives us some more versatility, but really excited about all those guys. And we think that it's going to give us a talented and experienced infield.
Well, you mentioned Nick Romano playing first base. While he was injured, Ben McCabe saw a lot of time there at first base. Of course, the roster lists him as a catcher, and I don't believe since I've covered you guys, I don't remember seeing him behind the plate much. So can you talk about how you're going to be able to utilize Ben this year if Nick is going to be back at first?
Yeah, so Ben was expected to be our starting catcher last year. Ben caught a ton 2 years ago, in the kind of the weird year in 21 with the COVID stuff and the way we had no midweek games when conference started. Ben started half the games before conference started, and then Josh Crouch really turned into who he ended up being, and at that point Nick had gotten hurt, and so Ben started playing a little bit of first base and DHing every game. And then last year, Ben ended up hurting his arm and needing arm surgery. And so he was supposed to DH the whole year, and then Nick gets hurt again. And so he got forced into the first base role, and we really had to try to protect him and try to hide the fact that he couldn't throw. So it was an interesting year for us to have somebody at first base that was really unable to make a throw more than lobbing it back and forth around the infield. So Ben had surgery at the end of last season in June. He held off. He wanted to make sure he wanted to play. He wanted to hit. He knew he could at least DH, and did a great job for us. But he's back behind the plate and able to do both. He still works out at first base. Obviously, just don't want to push Nick too much if we feel like he needs a DH for a day or whatnot, and days that Ben's not catching, then he has the ability to play. Ben has the ability to play first base. So you'll probably see Ben at both catcher and first base. But excited to have Ben healthy. His arm looks great, and obviously having again that bat in the lineup, a guy that has double-digit home runs the last 2 years, really gives us that age, experience, and even behind the plate, just knowing that he knows what he's doing and can do all that is awesome.
Well, last year, of course, you had Andrew Sundin kind of pushed into service, and he ended up really running with it. I see now you have a solid depth as far as catcher. Now that you have Ben back, you also have Riley Park, Eric Suarez, and of course Sundin coming back. So what can you say about this group of catchers? Yeah,
so my catching group is really deep. Obviously, Andrew is hurt. He had surgery in the fall. Will probably miss I don't know, the first month of the season, maybe. We don't really have a timeline for that, but he will be back at some point. We just don't know. So again, having the depth. Cole Russo caught a lot of games last year. He's back, has the ability to play third or first or catch. And then obviously Ben and Riley Parker is a freshman, and Keanu, who we picked up. So we have depth. We feel like we have 5 guys that can catch, but definitely have 3 guys that, between Ben and Andrew and Cole, that have caught before, that understand the position, that give us some depth, give us some versatility, because 2 of them can play multiple positions, and obviously give us some offensive firepower. So, and especially when we get Andrew back at some point, that will bring another experienced bat into the lineup. So just kind of excited about the depth at the catching position as well.
I'm curious, with obviously the adversity with the injuries, you mentioned Ben McCabe when you had to move him to first and DH. Yeah. Can that pay off here in the long term? Because it's bringing you versatility. Is that the positive? You got to take some positive from all the adversity you had with the injuries. Is that the positive, that now you got guys that have more versatility and experience that out of necessity?
Yeah, no doubt. I think just going through the adversity last year and understanding that I think early in the year when we lost Nick, and then we had lost Hunter and stuff, and I felt like the team just was kind of like, oh my gosh, like Ben's hurt, now Nick's hurt, and we kind of were going through this like, woe is me, like everything's going wrong, like things are, and we just had to really get them to focus on just trying to get better, like trust the people that are now playing, like they're here for a reason, they're good enough. So I thought that was great. But then again, obviously, getting guys to play different positions and whatnot is always, we didn't know about Andrew Sundin until the injuries happened. So it really was an opportunity for us to push some guys and maybe put them in the lineup that weren't expecting to be there, which then gave them experience. So it really changed our team in terms of that going into this year, where we're more experienced. We've had a lot of guys that got great time last year. Now we're getting healthier, so it gives us depth. It gives us the ability to do different things positionally or days off or whatever the case is. But it also gives us the ability that in case there are injuries, which there's going to be at some point, if somebody's going to have a something that misses a game or 2 or 3 or 4, whatever the case is, I feel like we're in a position now where we're not going to be having to thrust inexperienced people into the lineup, but we're going to have the depth to be able to put experienced people in there.
Well, speaking of injuries, those really hit your pitching squad last season with Connor and with Connor getting the way he was, and Hunter as well. So what can you say about this year's pitching squad? What do you think? What do you think is going to be different about that this season as opposed to last season? And who do you think we could see a lot of that's in store for a good year?
Yeah. So, again, I just think that there was a lot of guys that got some experience last year that are just a little bit older, and what it does is just gives us the depth. So So Rudy Gomez last year has the torn ACL, his late in his junior college career, comes to us. He misses the entire fall. He is trying to get comfortable with the knee and the brace and all that kind of stuff. And the first half of the year was just very average. And then by the second half of the year, he was one of our best pitchers. And so he really stepped up. Well, now he's able to have a full healthy year, a full healthy fall, really kind of hopefully going to start where he finished off and has a chance to be in our rotation. Ben Vespi, again, had a great freshman year. He has to step in and be the ace of the staff once those injuries go down, did a great job late. So now he kind of has not only that experience of being a bullpen and a swing guy, but then he gets to start, I think the last 8 weeks of the season and did a great job. So now he has the starting experience. He can put himself in a spot for a rotation. Nick Vieira misses last year. He's back and has had a great fall or whatnot, but Cam Crane and Dom Castellano, those 2 guys had a ton of opportunities last year. They're way more experienced. And so Kyle Kramer's back, who had a ton of save opportunities last year. Again, a guy that had made the transition from D2 to D1. So now that he's been in the program for over a year, like, and knows again what this is all about, like, you just feel really good about him. And then we brought in a couple transfers that I think have an opportunity to be a big time part of our team. Najir Victor, who was a dominant force at Florida Gulf Coast, Dom Stagliano, who was a freshman All-American at Stetson. And so you got those two guys, Zach Chappell, who's a fifth-year guy from North Florida, who brings a ton of experience. And then Zach Austin, who was a Division II transfer from a school up in Pennsylvania, who was a two-way player, a hitter as well, has given up hitting to really focus on pitching. And he might have the best stuff on our entire team and have the ability to really be a breakout guy, just learning how to pitch and learning how to do it on a daily basis at this level. You know, he's going to have some maybe growing pains early, but he's definitely the type of guy that, you know, has the ability to really change the end of the game for us. And so you got him, and then Cam Leiter, who's an absolute game-changing type pitcher as a freshman. The lineage and all that is there, but the stuff is there. I mean, again, he's a guy that has the top 2 or 3 stuff on our team. And so just getting him to kind of understand, we gave him 2 starts in the fall games just to try to understand the routine and understand what it takes to prepare yourself for those moments. And so he has the ability to start for us. Jacob Marlowe, again, last year, I don't even think Jacob Marlowe traveled the first couple road trips. And because of the injuries, and again, he had missed the fall, he got healthy and then really started to gain the confidence, and we started putting him in more and more games. And at the end of the year, he was one of our best, him and Rudy and Ben were really our 3 best pitchers, I feel like, other than, starting or bullpen guys. And so now he has a ton of experience, has really made great strides, is really vying for a starting job on one of our 4 starters. So we feel like we're getting the depth and the experience that we need, and guys that have had to pitch last year, guys that are getting healthier, guys that are now having a full year of health. And then obviously guys, again, like Cam Leiter that, just from a freshman standpoint, have the ability to really help us. So I think when you start adding those all together, there's a depth. We're much deeper than last year, so we can give guys breaks and not have to use them too much. We're set up in case we have to deal with some injuries, but we also have the age and experience to be able to perform at a high level. So we're definitely in a much better spot than we were last year.
I'm curious with Cam, and for those that don't know, obviously he's related to Al Leiter, Mark, part of a Leiter factory. They've done incredible for baseball. Jack Leiter, his cousin. I'm curious. He's obviously been around baseball a lot in his entire life. Do you see that in him as a freshman? Does that give him a little bit more of an advantage, knowing that he's been around the sport versus maybe another freshman that hasn't been around professional baseball, perhaps like he has?
Yeah, I think that the game changes obviously at every level that you go to. It just gets more in depth. It gets a lot more cerebral. And so I think that most freshmen come in and they just think like it's going to be like high school, and I'm just going to go out there and throw, and it's just not. Like, there's a process and there's a learning, and there's at practice and in bullpens, like you have to have a plan, and you have to try to get better every single day. And it's not just go through the motions. It's not just, well, I'm better than the other team. Like, there's a growth process that you have to go through. And so when you just watch him, though, when he comes in, like, he just talks a little bit differently, talks a little bit more maturely in terms of, of the game, understands that growth mindset, I think, a little bit more because he's just been around it and been taught from a family that has multiple big leaguers, and his dad played professionally. So, I mean, you're talking about, not only does he have uncles that play in the big leagues, but he's got 2 cousins in the big leagues. And so he's just, even though he grew up in Canada, so he wasn't really around the game, he just was around people that understood the game, and that, they have him on speed dial. So when he has a problem or he has something that he doesn't understand, he can call. There was a story, and it didn't really have to do with him getting better, but it was just a funny story of all of our players were eating dinner in the nutrition center in the fall, and they had some argument about who was better between a couple guys. And so he just FaceTimed Al in front of everybody to let Al make the decision, since he was like, it was like, who's a better major league pitcher, this guy or this guy? And Al, doing what he does and being in the big leagues, they like just FaceTimed him to get his input in it. So it's just be able to do that, to talk to a guy that pitched in the big leagues for 20 years or whatever it is, like just gives him some extra knowledge and the ability in the growth process. But when you go and watch him prepare and throw a bullpen, like from the first time I saw him, it was like, man, this guy he acts differently on the mound. He thinks differently on the mound. He's just a little bit more cerebral, a little bit farther ahead. He's acting more like a junior in terms of how he goes about his business, how he prepares in those situations. So, I'm excited. I think he obviously has a really bright future, and I'm glad he's going to be pitching for us.
Well, the guy that's going to be coaching him and all the rest of the pitchers is Mike Marath, former UCF great, that situation was fascinating because this took place in December when Nick left for a great opportunity with professional baseball, and that's not usual in college baseball. Like 2 months before the season, you got to find a pitching coach, and then the news comes out, you hire Mike Marath, and my reaction is like, wow, that's awesome. We got the UCF alums were excited because you got one of theirs. I saw him pitch. But then you got people like Bryson, who's a Braves fan, who's shocked. He's like, wait a minute. He's in our farm system. There were Braves fans on social media that were upset.
Yeah.
So which clearly tells you how well people received the hire because he's that good and with the job he's done with the Braves. Take us through that process, and because it's unique. It's not, you've had to replace coaches and things, but not that late, close to a season. So what was that like? Yeah,
it's definitely different. It was very and again, I'm happy for Nick, and it was a great opportunity for him and his family. And but there's just been a shift. Obviously, college baseball and professional baseball, we don't work on the same timelines. Their jobs are November to December, maybe early January. That's when the shifting occurs. The season ends November 1st, and they kind of renew contracts and are hiring people and making changes at the big league level or at the administrative in terms of general manager level. And so then all of a sudden their shifting starts happening, and then jobs start come open, or they make changes, or they don't renew contracts. And then you just get a lot of movement. And obviously there's also been a shift in professional baseball has really gone to a much more development-based system, which is what college has kind of been. So a lot of college coaches are getting kind of taken by the professional level. So, it's just been a shift the last probably 24 months in terms of a lot more college guys finding jobs in professional baseball. So you knew that it was a chance, but you obviously are still it's a different dynamic when you're trying to find somebody in January or December than you are when you're trying to find them in the summer, which is when most of our jobs are making those same exact things that the big leagues are doing, November to January. Ours are June and July. So it definitely was I cast a wide net. I talked to probably 50 different candidates, just trying to, gather information, gather interest, and try to figure out what was going to be the best for this club. And it's a different dynamic because you gotta bring somebody in the middle of the year that the season gets going like immediately. And so you've got to be somebody that you feel like can handle the season starting, and have to try to learn guys, and has that kind of experience. And but at the same time, you also have to look long-term future, like what's going to help us develop guys at a high clip and continue to build off of the success that the pitching staff has had the last couple of years. And so it was really difficult to try to find the candidate you felt like could do all of them, and then have somebody that really cares about this place and really is invested. And so obviously Mike kind of checks all the boxes of a guy that is a UCF alum. He's a local guy here that went to Boone High School, and had a lot of success here, and a third-round draft pick out of UCF, and then obviously pitched in the big leagues, but then has also had a lot of success as a minor league pitching coach, and been able to develop a ton of big leaguers. You look at the Braves pitching staff right now, and all the guys that have gone through their minor leagues, like Max Fried and Spencer Strider, and I'm blanking on a couple of the other guys. All of a sudden, the guy that tore his Achilles, all those guys have come up through those minor leagues, and Mike's been a part of their development. So to see that and to know that, it's just obviously a good opportunity for our players. And he had to hit the ground running. Like, he literally was in the office on Tuesday, and we started practice on Monday, and it was like, man, better watch a lot of, trying to get him as much information, all the video to be able to catch up and build the relationships and all that. And he's obviously an A+ human being. So that has been a great addition to our program. So it's good to have a UCF guy here and a guy that cares about, developing the program, as much as I do. And as much as our whole entire staff does, but a guy that has a different view of he was part of it and he was in these players' shoes. And I think that helps him with our guys too.
One unique skill set that I think Maroth brings to this staff. I remember when he was first brought on by the Braves organization, it was as their minor league rehab pitching coordinator. Given, the pitching injuries that have plagued this team for the past 2 seasons, how big is Maroth's skill set coming in to potentially address that sort of thing, so it's not as big a problem in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's big. Just a guy that has been there and helped rehab guys back. And obviously, we didn't talk about Zach Bennett as a pitcher, like was our perceived closer going into the season last year, and ended up, having Tommy John surgery. It was just over a year ago now. So he's making his way back. We'll be ready to go the first few weeks of the season, possibly opening weekend, but he's getting close. So just being able to get him back and help him through that process has been huge. I mean, I think, we hired Kaylee Shores as our new athletic trainer in the off season, and she's been an absolute rock star for our entire team, but really our pitching staff has just been game changing and really putting ourselves in a better situation and from less injuries and just being healthier and having a game plan on how we're going to get guys back, but how we're going to keep guys healthy. And just having the synergy with her and Jeremy Fraden, our strength coach, and then obviously when Nick was here and now with Mike, and just having them all work together has, I felt like, really been a game-changing thing for our entire team. But again, especially our pitching staff, just the knowledge that we have and the ability to put people in the best situations and get them back healthier, keep them healthy. I think it just saw a lot of changes in the fall and early on that have really put us in a much better situation. So I think between Mike and her, has been a great change and a great dynamic to kind of put us on a better spot than we were last year.
See, I told you, Bryson knows everything about the Braves, including what role Mike was hired in. I mean, I knew Mike from UCF, and then when he was with the Florida Flyer Frogs, and we had him on the show. It's just hilarious on there. But you mentioned Zach Bennett. So I want to ask you about the bullpen, because anybody that's followed your program knows how critical it is, your bullpen. That's a big part of your success. Tell us a little bit about the bullpen this year.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we got a deep bullpen and the ability to do some great things. Obviously, Kyle Kramer being back, who had 6 saves for us last year. I didn't mention Chase Santala, who was, again, just a guy that really was his first experience. He had transferred from Florida, had pitched very minimally there for them as a freshman. So last year, really just still kind of learning the ropes in terms of the ups and downs. And he had some unbelievable performances. I mean, the Ole Miss performance where I think he went 5 hitless innings or 4 hitless innings in relief, that was unbelievable. And so now again, to have him back at kind of the understand and the experience now where you just hope that his, I think he can be a lot more consistent. His stuff has been a little bit better. I think that we're going to be able to see the Chase Santala of Ole Miss. We're going to get to see him a lot more this year. Najir Victor has the ability to be a back end guy with a swing guy that can throw 2-3 innings. He has starting experience at the D1 level, but he has that power stuff at the end of the game. And so you put that into the mix. Zach Austin, again, probably has the best or second best stuff on our entire team and has the ability to be 94 to 97 miles an hour with a wipeout breaking ball, very Jeff Hakinson-like. But he's still making that transition. But he has that ceiling. And so to be able to see a guy, Mike's been able to work with him really. I mean, again, the fall was really trying to get him to understand what the daily routine of pitching was like and not hitting and not having to try to do both. And so I felt like Nick did a great job of preparing for that. And now it was kind of more like, all right, now how can we make some slight adjustments to kind of mechanically and mentally get you to be the great pitcher that the ceiling says you can be. And so again, that power stuff at the end of the game, again, Kyle Kramer, but then you add Zach Chappell, who has a great breaking ball, a great guy that can help us at the end of the game with left-handers. Nick Vieira has really made a jump. Again, Nick was a guy that didn't pitch a lot early as a freshman, pitched in the championship game against South Florida in 2001 and did a great job. Obviously gets hurt last year, but spent a lot of time this summer rehabbing and putting himself in a good situation and really made He was one of our best pitchers the entire fall. So he's really made some strides. That it gives us again another kind of swing guy that can start, can throw at the end of the game, like can do a bunch of different things. And then again, Jacob Marlowe and Dom Stagliano, who again, Dom was a freshman All-American at Stetson last year as a starter for them. Those guys can be huge swing guys. I mean, I think one or both of them are going to start at some point, whether it's on Sundays or whether that's on Tuesdays or Wednesdays in our midweek games, but also have the ability to not have to have those guys go 7 or 8 innings, but go 3-4 innings on a midweek. Maybe they split it or whatever, but then the ability to throw 1 or 2 innings on the weekends when we need them. So, I mean, again, the depth is really there. And so it's exciting to know that the bullpen has some power stuff. It has guys that are experienced, and it has guys that have pitched at a high level, whether it's that at D1 or at another school or whatever the case is. But it has the ability to be a really dominant back half, and that takes a lot of pressure off the starters. And so Rudy and Cam and Ben and whether it's Jacob or Dom, like those guys, again, just go out there and throw 1 great inning and then go do it again if you can. And if it's 4 great innings and we got to go to the bullpen, we got the depth. And if it's 7 great innings, awesome. Then we got guys at the back end to close the game out. So it just takes a lot of the pressure, I think, off the starters to know that they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be, these huge inning eaters where, man, we have to go 7 or 8 innings. Where last year you felt like, man, like we need, with the injuries, it's like, man, how are we going to get to the end of the game? Like, and we were just trying to put pieces together. Cam Cranes, like those guys, like they just stepped up. And so now it's the ability to, hey, like we've got the horses at the end. We got the horses at the beginning. We feel like we got horses in the middle. Like, just go do your best, go close out the inning. And if we ask you to go do another inning, great. And if not, we'll get somebody else in there to go do the same thing for the next inning. And we feel like in a good situation, again, to overcome any injuries that we have, to give guys rest if they need it, but also have guys that are super talented and power stuff all through the the rotation and the back end.
Coach, looking to the schedule, I noticed when I looked that you actually have 4 national seeds from last year's NCAA baseball tournament on the schedule. ECU, of course, being in conference. Georgia Southern comes here after you beat them in Statesboro last season. Your midweek game against Miami, and then Maryland is also coming to town. So, yeah. Can you talk about kind of what went into this year's non-conference schedule and how they can prepare this team for their final season in the American?
Yeah, it's going to be super challenging. Obviously as baseball coaches, we're kind of like same thing with football where you're scheduling 3 years in advance sometimes. So you really don't know how good a team is going to be. Obviously Georgia Southern had a monster year last year. They have most of their team returning. They're going to be out for blood because we go there and take 2 out of 3 in their place last year. So they're going to want revenge. So it's going to be a huge series for us. Obviously we're starting with Siena, who every year comes in here and is excited to get out of the cold and excited to get the season started. And Tony has done a great job for the last 50-something years of being a college baseball coach. So obviously we're playing the normal midweek games, which are FAU is always a perennial regional team. North Florida has been really tough. We struggled with them last year. Troy, the Sun Belt, has been, probably one of the top 3 or 4 conferences in the country the last few years. And so, Troy, we went to their place 2 years ago and lost 2 out of 3. So it's not going to be an easy weekend. Dartmouth came in here, I think, 4 years ago and took 2 out of 3 from us. They're always a perennial Ivy League champion. So, and then Maryland, obviously ranked 13th, 15th in the country right now. And so having them here is going to be a huge challenge for us. And then obviously having the Miami, we got Florida State at home for 2 games. So it's a challenging schedule. I don't know who's in charge of that, but they should be fired, right? Like, but it's going to be fun and it's challenging. But in order to be the best, you got to beat the best. In order to prepare us for our conference, which again we think is one of the best conferences in the country in the American, to prepare us for ECU, like that's what the Maryland at Clemson. So it's going to be a regional type atmosphere at Clemson. So I mean, we really set the schedule up for some difficult games. But I do also feel like we have the experience, we have the age, we have the kind of the team that can handle that and put us in a good situation, not only to win our conference, but put us in a chance to host a regional or put us in a national seed. We just got to go out and show everybody what we're made of and have a lot of fun and just, really focus on winning pitches. And if you do that, we got a chance.
Yeah, Clemson, of course, has their new head coach, Coach Bakich, coming over from Michigan. That was a big story in the offseason. Florida State comes here. Link Jarrett, new head coach there at FSU, with Rich Wallace, former UCF Knight, as his staff. I went to school at the same time he did, so I'm getting old, clearly.
Yeah.
Between him and Mike Maroth, what's going on here? But I'm curious, how is your schedule going to be adjusted or affected when you get to the Big 12? I think you mentioned on Media Day that's 30 conference games for the Big 12. Just explain the Big 12 formula as far as scheduling and how that affects your program, because obviously the American's 24, so that will affect your schedule to some extent.
Yeah, so it adds more weekends of conference play. So in the American, you have 6 non-conference weekends to start the season, and then you go 8 straight conference weekends because we have even number of teams. So we're able to play the last 8 weekends are all conference games. So the Big 12 will have an uneven amount of teams, plus we'll have more teams. So it's going to change a little bit where instead of having 6 non-conference weekends to start the year, we'll only have 3. Then we'll start conference play in week 4 with the odd number. Then one team has a bye every week. So you'll have a bye week mixed in somewhere in those 11 weeks or 11 weeks of conference play. And so you get 3 non-conference weekends and 11 conference weeks with 1 bye week somewhere in there based on the schedule. So you're going to play more conference games, which obviously is fine. Like, it's no big deal. Like, that's just what the schedule is. So just with the number of teams that are different. So the first year or 2, depending on what I guess Texas and Oklahoma do, there'll be 2 teams that we don't play as well. And then once those teams leave, then everyone will play everybody. But it'll be a good challenge. Obviously a lot of great teams in that conference, but I feel like the American has kind of prepared us for that with as many good teams as we have in our conference. So, we'll be excited when that happens in July, but we got a lot of work to do between now and then.
And so it'll be 30 games, even when Oklahoma and Texas leave, whenever they leave, it'll be still 30.
It will not change. It will not change at all.
Does that affect too how your in-state, because you like playing the in-state teams, does that make it more challenging to fit them into the schedule?
I don't think so. Just because they're midweek games, I think we're able to try to continue those games and those rivalries and things like that. So we do plan on keeping the play USF every year, a weekend series. So kind of like Florida, Miami do, kind of like Georgia Tech do, or Clemson, South Carolina, where they're playing a weekend series every year early in the year. We're going to keep that up. I just feel like it's important for the rivalry and it's obviously an easy commute and things like that. So Billy and I have kind of agreed that we're going to try to continue to do that and continue to play each other. And we're playing 6 times, the last couple of years. So obviously that won't happen. It'll go down to 3, but I think that's an important part. And I think it's good for college baseball. And, I feel like, we have a great rivalry, and they're obviously a great team, so it's going to help us RPI wise and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a good setup, and we'll try to continue to do that.
Couple last things before we let you go. Kind of creative part of the schedule there later in the year as you go to Cincinnati, you play Ohio State and Wright State, which is very familiar to you. You coached there, had great success. You and Coach Ball Malone like to just this year playing your former schools. She's playing Boise, you're playing Wright State. I know that's a long ways away, but I'm curious how that all came about, playing in Ohio. Is that just one of those things, hey, we're going to go to Cincinnati, we might as well get some games on there, and then obviously Wright being a special place for you?
Yeah. It just kind of worked out where, we're going to Tulane and then Cincinnati. So it was 2 games on the road. So it's traveling a lot and then coming back and then trying to play a game on Tuesday or Wednesday and then get back on the plane and go to Ohio. School is out, so it's after school, after finals are done. So I just felt like it was a good opportunity for us to instead of traveling back and forth and taking 4 flights and near the end of this, because it's really near the end of the year, and just kind of putting a lot of grind on the guys in terms of, sleeping and all that kind of stuff. I felt like this was a better situation. And so, obviously just called my contacts up there with the teams that I knew were going to be around the area, all over Indiana, Ohio, and just tried to figure out who could play and could fit it in so that we could just go straight from Tulane to Cincinnati or to Ohio or wherever and try to fit in 2 midweek games late in the year and just give us an opportunity to kind of not travel as much, but at the same time get a challenging schedule and get on the road and just kind of prepare us maybe for a regional or the conference tournament. And so it just worked out well where it was like, hey, instead of going Tulane, come back, try to play a game, and then get back on a plane and fly again, let's just fly straight. And so we end up able to find, 2 games in midweeks, which I thought was just going to make it worthwhile to do that. And you're not playing 1 midweek game, but 2. So it makes the whole trip worthwhile. So, and obviously going back to Wright State, I mean, that wasn't originally the game plan, but it'll be exciting for me. I really haven't put a ton of thought into it just because it's so far ahead, and I'm just really worried about opening day and trying to get the guys ready. But I'm sure when the time comes, like, I'll be excited to go back and see a lot of people, and obviously the staff there that I'm still friends with and whatnot. And probably a bunch of alums will be around. So it'll be good, but it'll be a good challenge for us. I mean, they're obviously really good, and Ohio State will be really good. So it'll be a good challenge for us to get on the road for 11 days and play, 8 really, really tough opponents on the road.
One big new offseason news in the NCAA there. They've passed the full volunteer position becoming a full-time position, which will affect softball and baseball full-time. That's something that's been talked about in baseball for a few years. I remember you were very vocal when it didn't pass a few years ago about it. Now it's finally passed. Your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's good for our game. It's just going to give more people opportunities to go out recruiting, to kind of build their resume, to get on the road and get the experience that they need. That's just going to end up being better for our game. I think it opens up more minority opportunities. So I just think for our game, having people like that are going to be in more programs are just going to be better for the players. To have more full-time coaches that are going to be around them, give them a better experience. It's going to allow more coaches to have more time at home now that you have an extra person on the road. So your family life balance is going to be better. And like I said, it's going to open up more opportunities for coaching candidates. So I just think from a totality standpoint, for the players, for the programs, for the coaches, for the just longevity and just the betterment of our game, I just think it makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad that we finally got it done.
You used a little bit of replay last year. How'd you feel about instant replay during conference games and so forth? And moving forward, what you expect? What do you want to see from instant replay?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's just part of the game now. Like, and again, umpires are not perfect, and it's just opportunity for when certain situations arise, especially late in the game when the moment is really big, that we just make sure we get the call right. Like, make sure that the kids are rewarded for doing the right thing. I think it's just obviously with technology now, it's just so easy to do it. I don't feel like it slows the game down too much, but to make sure that we get calls right and whatnot. So I think it's a big part of our game now, and I think it's a great part.
And then the last question I have to ask you, are you on Team Sami Zayn or Team Cody Rhodes, who should beat Roman Reigns for the title?
I just love the Sami Zayn storyline. It's been awesome to watch and follow and stuff. So hopefully he can make it happen. And but I was really hoping The Rock was going to do it. But
you said The Rock. It just didn't happen. He's too focused on the movies. He can't. He says he's not fit enough, which is kind of what a problem to have. He's as fit as he is in training, and yet he says he's not wrestling fit.
Right. That seems not impossible, but such is life.
It is just such as life. Well, Coach, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We're excited. UCF Baseball gets going against Siena opening night. Check out UCFKnights.com for all the details. Coach, always a pleasure to talk to you. We'll see you out there at the park, and thanks for talking to us.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me. Have a great day.
And thanks again to Greg Lovelady for our traditional in-depth interview there. Always a pleasure. He's been on every year since he's been here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, Jeffrey. It's always a
friend of the pod.
That's right. Thanks to Alex Funderburg over there at Baseball to help us set that traditional review. And look, very revealing from Greg, obviously talking about what the future with the South Florida rivalry and what's getting the scheduling with the Big 12. We talked about the Big 12 earlier. So it'll be fascinating to see this year's team and how all the pieces fit and hopefully staying healthy, and especially in the pitching staff with the new pitching coach, Mike Maroth.
My question to you guys is this, like with ECU obviously being the clear favorite, are they gettable this year? Or is it still ECU's conference lose? Or does Greg think that, there's really an opening for them to perhaps steal the conference crown this year?
Well, I think East Carolina is still the team to beat. I mean, Cliff Godwin's done a great job. They're the favorites until somebody dethrones them. That being said, as you know, Jeff, you and I have covered the league for a long time. The league's usually been a top 5 league. UCF has certainly been at the top. They won the conference title in 2017. And I think it's, if you look back at last season, if the conference would have actually had a down year, if the conference had a normal year, I think UCF would have been in the NCAA tournament. But because the league was down, UCF, the wins they got in the conference, finishing at the top of the league, didn't get register the quality wins that they're used to, Bryson. So I think that's kind of to me, Bryson, that's hopefully the conference, other than East Carolina, steps up, because I think that gives you more opportunities to get great wins. But I think Greg's also done a great job with the non-conference this year with Maryland at home. You got Miami, obviously Florida State coming in, Georgia Southern. So you hope that will help as far as the scheduling is concerned. And look, for this team to compete, it's going to be pitching, I think health, right, Bryson? Health and pitching.
Yes, health and pitching, I think, is going to be the biggest thing. Having Mike Maroth, we've talked about his expertise before in rehabbing injuries, and I think having that is going to be crucial coming into this. I'm looking at the preseason all-conference team. ECU has 2 unanimous selections to that team in pitcher Carter Spivey and outfielder Jacob Jenkins-Cower, but Wichita State sneaking in there with 4 players in there. I think that this conference, this American Conference, is actually on a solid upswing in terms of competitiveness.
Yeah, hopefully it's a bounce back year for the league to be a multi-bid league again, like it's been.
Right. Houston, for instance, was like 1 vote, I believe, because I believe the way they work is that the way the coaches vote works is that you have a first place vote, which is like a certain number of points, I guess. And I think that's how that works. Sure. And so Houston was only 1 point ahead on UCF in the rankings. UCF was 38 and 3rd, and then Houston was 39 and 2nd. So from what that's telling me, sure, it looks like right after ECU, the coaches are thinking that Houston and UCF are kind of jockeying for position in that 2nd place right now, with Tulane and Wichita State right behind them. But don't count out Tulane and Wichita State either. Like I said, Wichita State's got a lot of people on that preseason all-conference.
A lot of individual talent, obviously. Eric Wedge has moved on over there at Wichita State. So we'll see. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully the league gets back to what it was prior to last year, which was a top 5 league, which gets you quality wins, which gets you multiple bids into the NCAA. If the league was strong last year, UCF would have been in the tournament. So we'll see how that goes. And then obviously everybody's going to watch John Rice Plumlee and see what happens. And I thought that was revealing about Greg and what he thinks his potential is for John Rice. I think John Rice is going to be a bigger factor on this team than people, and maybe that don't follow baseball closely, think. Especially with the style that UCF plays, with being aggressive on the base pads. I think his range on the outfield, I got the sense he really likes John Rice and what he'll do with his team.
Yeah. I think last season we had a speedster in the outfielder by the name of Trent Taylor. He got a lot more playing time last year in his final season, but one thing that I really noticed is that while he wasn't in the outfield all the time, he was there a good amount of times, but while he wasn't there all the time, whenever he wasn't fielding, they brought him on as a pinch runner. And from what it looks like to me, I think that looks like it seems like that's a similar role, I think, for John Rice Plumlee to take. Because the way that I look at this outfield, I don't think that John Rice Plumlee could start every game, but I don't think that really matters, because having him on the base pads is huge with the speed that he brings.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that as fun as that can be, and I think John Rice Plumlee with his speed alone could probably win us a few games and score us a few extra runs. I still think that the big thing, and you guys have talked about this, is health of the pitching staff. That's always been the issue year in and year out. Can they stay healthy? I think that's going to be the overall key, and that's going to determine how far UCF gets, both in the national rankings and in this conference. First game is Friday, 6 p.m. against Siena. The Saints are back in town. 3-game set at John Giuliano Park. Friday 6, Saturday 4, Sunday at 1. And then FAU comes to town on Tuesday before the Knights head out to Clemson next weekend for a 3-game set. Among the other teams coming into town, Troy, Florida State, and Maryland, as well as a series with North Florida that goes midweek. And then conference play starts March 31st with South Florida coming to town at home. on the 31st of March. That's a 6 p.m. start for that. And UCF also travels down to Miami April the 4th. That big series against ECU is in Greenville this year, April 6th, 7th, and 8th. So that's the one to keep a close eye on as UCF gets baseball season underway yet again. Final year in the American as well.
Yeah, but it'll be a big one. And, of course, a lot of coverage on YouTube, a lot of interviews from Media Day that Bryson and Nick Porcelli did for this upcoming baseball season. Check it out on YouTube, and especially the interview with Greg Lovelady and all the player interviews from Media Day. Of course, we also have some softball post-game on the YouTube videos, Jeffrey, and we're going to talk some softball on the other side here.
Yes, we do. You know who's really excited about talking softball? Lucy, my dog. She can't wait to get to that. She's like, enough of that. I want to get it. All right. We'll talk softball, and Bryson's going to talk about some records that have just been broken in a couple sports. We'll be right back. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We're back here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Eric, Bryson, Jeff, and Nick Porcelli also joining us here on the show. Let's talk a little softball, Eric, just like we promised. 3-1 start to the season. Lost to UGA in the opener. In a game where, I felt like they just couldn't get one of those situations where, they just couldn't get the timely hit. Also had a hard time keeping the leadoff runners off the bases, but they recovered well. All right. Got the W got wins against UMass, Ohio State, and then that late night, early morning thriller against Boise State that you and the crew were up for. Not a bad start, right?
Yeah. No, good start. I mean, 3-1, I'd take it. The Georgia game, some bases on balls, a defensive miscue kind of hurt them a little bit. But I think the big positives is I think you see a promising pitching staff, a staff that as a whole really only allowed a 179 batting average in the 4 games and got a lot of swing and miss pitches, 36 strikeouts in 28 innings. I thought that was very positive. Caitlin Felton, I think, stepped up. She had a tough outing in relief against Georgia, was dominant after that. And she said she learned a lot from the Georgia game. She felt that she let Georgia dictate things, and she wasn't going to let that happen again. She was going to one that was going to dictate the terms as far as pitches. And boy, it showed afterwards, and she won the American Conference Pitcher of the Week. So, the Boise game was a wild one. As we've learned, Boise State, if we're playing Boise State in a sport, there's going to expect a lightning delay and expect this game to end in the morning. So if you're making plans to go to Boise, Idaho this fall for the football game, just prepare accordingly on that. But they found a way to win. And remember, Jeff, we said last week on the preview, they may have to win a 9-8 type of game. Can they do it like they did last year? Well, they did on opening weekend. And then Saturday night, great pitching from Sarah Willis, DeVoe, and Felton to shut out Ohio State. So 3-1, I think you take it. They're ranked still in the top 20 in all these polls. Good positive start for a young group. And I think the depth with Chloe Evans, who's a superstar, I think waiting to happen, all Big Ten performer. Yeah. She was fantastic. Quick little note about her. Her and her family went to the same high school as Todd Dagenet. How about that?
No kidding.
Yeah,
huh.
Found that out.
It was the UP, huh? All right.
Yeah. But she was tremendous in the cleanup spot because she's protecting Cody and Doherty. And Kennedy Searcy had a big weekend, too. And then Jasmine Williams. Nick, you were there with that incredible catch in the 6th inning at shortstop. Amazing catch that basically won the game for them, really preserving that 1-0 win.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was impressive. I mean, I was listening to actually the ESPN Plus broadcast on my headphones during the play, so I was both
fantastic guy per broadcast, wasn't it?
Oh my God, well done, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I got that yelling in my ear. Eric's going crazy. I mean, I was amazed by it. I mean, just that entire game too. It was like a just really great defensive performance, and I think that was the highlight of the game.
Yeah. Now, so Eric, you talked about UCF in the top 20 in a lot of these polls. They have a game against a team that's just outside the top 25 in Mizzou midweek on Wednesday at home.
Yep.
And then it's off to Clearwater, where you get Friday, receiving votes Michigan, Texas A&M. Saturday, number 16 Duke, number 9 Alabama. Sunday, number 23 Mississippi State. Stuff gets real in a hurry now, doesn't it?
Yeah, but that's how Coach Bumolin had. Look, The Georgia, I mean, they started with Georgia, which you got to see, Jeff, in person. That might be one of the best offenses in the country. UCF held them to 4 hits. And then they hit like 10 home runs the rest of the weekend and crushing people. So they've already been pushed. Missouri's talented as well from the SEC. That'll be a tough midweek. Then you mentioned the teams, Michigan, and depending on which polls, because there's a million softball polls, Michigan's ranked in some, they're not ranked in others. That's a rematch from the regional final, a young team. Texas A&M is off to a good start. Tricia Ford's the new head coach. Alabama, always is Alabama. That's a big-time television matchup. Duke's very good, top 20 team. And then Mississippi State, the big primetime. They're going to learn a lot about this group. They have a deep pitching staff, UCF does. They have a lot of arms. They threw 6 pitchers this weekend. And it's kind of a baseball style right now, Jeffrey. I think Felton, is the number 1. You got Sarah Willis, who they're trying to figure out how to use. She started the Georgia game, started the Ohio State game, went 3 innings, maybe a little bit of an opener type of style that you see in baseball from time to time. But then you also have Grace Jewell, I think is more of a starter. But then you got Angelina DeVoe and Macy Miles, Les Miles' daughter, who's more of a reliever. You can go off speed. Whereas the other pitchers I mentioned are more hard throwers. So a lot of variety there. But they will be challenged. I think we're going to see all of them this weekend against Clearwater. And I think this offense will have to win another high-scoring game because in Clearwater, as you play all these games, it's going to take its toll. And I'll be curious to see the offense. I think the big question I have offensively, who's going to be the leadoff hitter? They've tried 3 different leadoff hitters, Elise Volpe, Jazz Williams, and then they also tried one other one as well in the leadoff spot. So we'll see how they look. But look, it's a promising start. This is a talented team. It's going to take some time, but there's a lot of promise and a lot of eyeballs there. 2 games, over 1,000 fans. Opening night, record crowd for opening night crowd. And then, Nick, you were at the Ohio State game because you like to be in the stands with the people. You're a people's guy.
He's a man of the people.
Describe the atmosphere on Saturday night, because I was blown away considering we're going head-to-head with men's basketball, 1,091 for Ohio State. And it was electric.
Yeah, that was so much fun. I mean, I'm going to be honest, they might want to consider, if this team keeps having the success that they're having, they might want to consider expanding that stadium because there were so many people there. Like, people are sitting, on stairs in the walkway. Yep. It was like that at the Georgia game, which I was also on. I got stuck behind actually a bunch of football players who were all crowded on the stairs up by the press box. And I'm just trying to because I'm a short guy, I'm trying to lean over. I'm like, did they hit it? I can't really see what's happening, but it was so fun. The crowd was so into it. For me personally, that was my first time ever going to a softball game in the stands, at least. There was a couple times last year where I'd watch from the outfield, but being there in that crowd, it just makes it so much fun to. I really can't describe it. It just, if you haven't been to a game, go to a game. You will enjoy it.
I will say this: I think the stands would have been packed for the Boise State game had it not been before.
Oh, probably right.
100%.
They had 800. They had 850 for the UMass game. It was a good crowd for the UMass game on Friday. I think the first pitch was 4:30. I agree with you that if the Boise game would have started on time, I think they would have had another crowd close to a sellout. But the weather chased a lot of people off. The capacity is only 600. Jeff, you're there. That's going to be a question going into the Big 12, where you have schools like Texas and Oklahoma for a year, but then you got Oklahoma State. I think these crowds are going to continue and go into the Big 12, and it's going to be interesting how they figure out there. That could be, I think that's going to be on the agenda there as far as the agenda. They've added field turf there this weekend, which helped out with the weather. They've got a new locker room, but I think expanding of the seats is definitely going to be a conversation that's probably already been happening and it probably will continue.
Oh yeah, I think that's certainly the case, and we talked about the shopping list, right? I know that's going to be high on Coach Paul Malone's shopping list, along with a bunch of other things. And man, I would love to be what I would give to be a fly on the wall in those meetings. That each of the coaches with each of the programs has with Terry Mahosner and the UCF administration about hey, what's the 5 to 10 year plan? What's what do we need and what do we want? And it really amazes me. This is such an exciting time right now, and you're seeing it right now with softball really having its moment. And man, we saw it this week. It's so gratifying to see the fans, like you guys have said, come to these games and really support the team, and it matters, and it shows. Yeah, it really does show. We talk about it time and time again, Eric, right? But that type of fan support, especially in the Olympic sports, matters tremendously to the performance of the team and the product on the field.
I also want to add real quick, I think I don't know how it was last year, but I think that even the media is paying more attention to the team, because when I went to the game on Georgia, this is a funny story. The press box was so crowded, I actually got kicked out of there because they couldn't fit the people. I mean,
unfortunately, yes. The press. This was just like the regionals. Yes, Jeff knows he was at this press box this weekend. That's definitely on the list of people if we need to upgrade that as well.
Yeah, that might be on the shopping list too.
Big time shopping list.
They didn't ask me to leave, but someone, I won't say who, came up to me. He's like, it's pretty crowded in here, blah blah. And I'm like, all right, I get it.
Well, in fairness, it is Beatty. Beatty's a big deal. He's a Sentinel guy. He's my boy. Come on, he's got to get his.
I didn't say who it was. Hey, I didn't say who it was.
I just want to give Jason a shot.
Hey man, I'm just saying, who shows up to more games than Beatty? That would be us. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Well, look, facility problems aside, I think that this opening weekend was a very great start for this softball program, in the sense that I honestly think that with the way basketball has been going, it has completely stolen the spotlight right away. I mean, you have 3 defensive highlights that could probably go under a play of the week candidates, 3 defensive highlights. Chloe Evans, of course, emerges into, I would argue, we lost Denali Shoppocker last year. I think Chloe Evans basically kind of fills that place that she left behind. Mm-hmm. And now as they kind of warm up to go into Clearwater, I think that this team is fair. I would say it looks about 85-90% reloaded to what it was last year, at least from my perspective.
Got to control the wildness and the pitching staff. Too many walks, 18 walks, 4 hit by pitches. That's the concern. Got to improve that. I think they know that. So we'll see what happens with that. But hey, the great attendance, which is great, because Jeff, remember all the excuses. Well, you can't have two sporting events going on at the same time. You guys were at basketball. They had a great crowd too, right? At the same time. I don't know. It's hard to figure out,
It was a really good crowd for basketball. I think it was better than even what everyone was thinking. I think there was almost 7,000 fans there. Space Game, I think, had something to do with that, but it was, it was a good turnout. There was a really good turnout.
So I think that's a big positive, that you could support multiple teams at once, because let's be real, when you get to the Big 12, that may happen more often with conflict.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. So that takes us over to Bryson Turner. Now, Bryson, you were following women's golf over the weekend, and we saw some record-breaking performances, didn't we?
Yes. So here's a fun little story for you all. So if you listen to last week's episode, we were talking about the women's golf round going on live at the time, because the final round of the UCF Challenge at Eagle Creek Golf Club over in Lake Nona was being played while we were recording. So as soon as we finished recording that episode, I got up and I got ready and I went over to Eagle Creek to watch the end of the round. I walked up the back nine, and I met up with Anna Nordfors, a Campbell graduate senior transfer, and followed her for her final 5 holes. She birdied 4 of them. 4 of her final 5 she birdied, and she needed it too, because she won, if I remember correctly, she won by 2 strokes to get the individual victory at the UCF Challenge, to become the 5th UCF women's golfer to get an individual victory. And she did so in historic fashion by not only breaking the single round record twice, which we covered in last week's episode, but after this final round, she smashed the 54-hole record by finishing with a stroke total of 195, 5 strokes below the previous mark held by Tanrata Pidden at 200. The team, by the way, also broke a program record for the lowest under par finish, and I want to stress under par finish in program history at 27 under. Now, it wasn't the stroke finish, because the team finished with the second lowest stroke finish in team stroke finish in 54 holes at 837. You want to know what the only one lower than that is? The Mercedes-Benz Intercollegiate back in fall 2022. So this women's golf team has shot the 2 lowest 54-hole scores in program history. And now Anna Nordfors has emerged to be a force to be reckoned with on this team that includes a top 20 player in the country in Sunrata Pitton via the Golf Stat rankings. The women's golf team will be back in action soon. They'll be playing in Melbourne for the Moon Golf Invitational from February 19th to the 21st. And so, even though they're not going to be in the Orlando area now, women's golf is definitely going to be a team to watch, especially after that breakout performance by Anna Nordfors at Eagle. Yeah.
A couple quick notes here. Women's tennis plays FIU at home, excuse me, on Valentine's Day. We're recording this on Valentine's Day. They'll be playing that evening. And then they play Friday at number 9 Vanderbilt and Sunday at number 22 Tennessee. Men's tennis, they're off to a rough start yet again over this past weekend. They lost at Illinois and at Nebraska. And so they're off to a 1-5 start, but they get to rebound against Miami and Coral Gables on Friday the 17th. That tough schedule, John Roddick is just really putting him through the ringer early in the season. Track and field, some notes from over the weekend. Isabella Richardson has emerged as a star in the distance running. She broke you may recall, she broke the freshman 5K record in cross country in the fall. And this past weekend, she beat one of Anne-Marie Blaney's records, a 10-year-old freshman record in the 3K. She came in at 9 minutes, 39.99 seconds in the 3K, which is a new school record. So congrats to Isabella Richardson, who's emerging as UCF's newest distance running star as well. Over to Nick, because I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that we have 2 new, not new, really, but 2 spring football leagues firing up. The USFL, of course, starts in April, but the XFL is starting this week. May recall the XFL, was reconstituted in 2020 and then scotched because of COVID. Things seem to be going well. We have a franchise in Orlando now, the Orlando Guardians, and they have 1 UCF player, and there are 3 others who are spread throughout the league, Nick.
Yep, that's correct. Before going into that, just wanted to give a quick shout out to Jordan Franks. Yes, he's on the practice squad, but he's earned himself a Super Bowl ring. Congratulations.
That's right. Congrats to Jordan against for the Kansas City Chiefs this past week.
Yeah, congratulations. But yeah, so football's not done. We only got to wait a week. XFL is coming back. It's got a pretty famous owner, as we all know, with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So who we got? We have Jordan McRae, an old lineman for the San Antonio Brahmas, Adrian Killens for the Arlington Renegades, although he originally started out with the Houston Roughnecks. Did we ever find out, was he just traded or did he just get moved?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Like I just saw he was just moved, but either way, he's going to play. And and one other thing on Adrian Killens, Eagles, that's what you get for cutting AK. All right. So anyway, Nick, carry on.
Yeah, we have Renell Hall, a cornerback, also for the Arlington Renegades, and you were already hyping him up. And this is a guy who our very own Kyle and Ash got to interview, Terrence Plummer, for the Orlando Guardians. And I want to talk about a little bit because I'm going to say this: he is a guy who right now is being promoted as one of the faces of the Guardians franchise. I don't know, and I think he will be for the rest of the season. Whether that's due to his play or not, who knows? But I think they are smart for pushing him because he is the only UCF guy on that roster. He's got connections. And like this past weekend, for example, they had like a pick your seat event, a Camping World / a little meet and greet where they flew down a couple coaches and 3 players. Mm-hmm. And he was one of them. And for the record, like these teams are housed, practice all their games up in Arlington, and then they'll just come down to Orlando for the game. So they had to like choose some people to fly down here, and they picked him to be one of them. And later in the day, Bryson, you were at the game. They had them go to the UCF basketball game to try to connect with community. He's one of the guys they're going to be pushing to do that, and I believe that's a smart choice.
Yeah, 100% on board. And their schedule for the Guardians, they start actually on the road at Houston. It's coming Saturday, 8:30
on ESPN.
ESPN and FX. That game is being televised. The San Antonio Brahmas game, that's their home opener. They will be playing at Camping World Stadium, like Nick said, 4 p.m. Sunday, February 26th. And that game will also be televised on ESPN. So if you can't get down to Camping World, check it out. And yet, like I said, here's another opportunity for former UCF guys to have a job in pro football and hopefully develop themselves. Maybe get to the NFL at some point. You just never know. I've been vocal about my support of leagues like the XFL and the USFL, and I hope that they can succeed and provide more opportunities for us to watch former UCF players and play the game that they love. We have developmental leagues in the NBA. We obviously have developmental leagues in baseball, and those have helped out a lot of UCF players in the past. And here's hoping at soccer too, right? USL, Eric. And so my hope is that works out for the NFL as well. I think that's it for what we've got for today, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Busy. Hey, it was a busy show. It's a busy show. Lots of sports.
I know. Well, it's the spring sports equinox, and you can follow it. You can follow us throughout it on at UCF Banneret _SBN. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as well. We got plenty of content that we've been coming up with on the YouTube channel. Big, huge thanks to Bryson, to Kyle, to Eric, Nick, all of you guys for pulling that together and help us out on YouTube. You can follow us each individually at Jeff _Sharon, Eric Lopez Elo, it's Bryson Turner, Nick Porcelli, and the number 2. Also, Kyle is at the SOTG. Kyle is at the Super Bowl at the game, covering stuff for his other game. What a time, man! Man. I know, man. I'm so jealous. He got the opportunity to do that, and he was talking to had a great interview with Eric the Enemy, by the way. That was up that he put up on his Twitter feed. But definitely recommend you take a look at that. And of course,
he'll be out there to the XFL during the season. So should be fun. Bryson and Nick will be doing baseball. Nick will be doing a little softball. I'll be doing obviously a little softball. I'll be in Clearwater this weekend. So we're all over. We're spread out.
We'll be everywhere.
Yeah, you're going to be heading out there for that crazy tour. Are you going to be calling the games, Eric?
No, they got the national crew there, but I'll be hovering around. By the way, that UCF Mississippi State game, Sunday night, ESPN2, first ever nationally televised linear game, primetime for softball. So go watch them, watch that game.
First regular season national TV.
Regular season national primetime.
Postseason was last year. Right, in primetime. I can't wait for that, man. That's going to be fun.
Should be good.
All right. We thank you so much for listening. Of course, leave us a rating wherever you get your podcast. We are available on Apple and Android devices. And don't forget to reach out to us, of course, UCF Banneret _SBN on Twitter, also on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as well. For all of us here at Black Gold Banneret, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening. Enjoy this busy weekend of UCF sports. Baseball about to get underway. Enjoy it, folks.